Hello and welcome to No Wrong Choices, a podcast about the adventures of life that explores the career journeys of successful and interesting people. I'm Larry Samuels, soon to be joined by the other fellows Tushar Saxena and Larry Shea. If you've been enjoying the show, please support us by giving No Wrong Choices a 5-star rating on your podcasting platform and by pressing follow or subscribe. You can also learn more about us at NoWrongChoices.com and by looking for us on social media. This episode features a real-life hero, Deputy Fire Chief Bill Gillette of the Elmira, New York Fire Department. Commonly, we've talked to celebrities, people who have worked in the entertainment industry on this program, but that's not the core premise of what we're doing. We talk to people who have put themselves out there to go after a dream, an idea, or a vision, and to make a difference. And undoubtedly, Bill Gillette is a great example of that. Larry Shea, why don't you lead us into this conversation?
Yeah, sure. I think the common theme when we're younger is we want to aspire to be something, heroic, as you say, right? We look up to policemen and firemen and astronauts, right? There's something about the way they're dressed, the way they carry themselves, that gives it a place of honor when you're talking about growing up to be a certain profession. And, usually, as you say, on this show, we talk a lot about the scarcity, right? The unobtainable, like, an actor or, a foreign correspondent. I mean, there are a million things we've done here, but they all seem very scarce. And here we have a job that is plentiful. We could all grow up and aspire to do it. But man, this job is not for everyone because, there is a certain level of falling off the cliff that could occur if you do your job improperly. You can't say that about some. If you do a bad acting job, you just do another take, right? You can't do another take if you're a fireman. So, yeah, this is a profession that you really have to have your heart set on doing it because it's a tough one.
I've always thought, I think about when I go back to being a kid, right? So, you remember that little sketch they used to do on Sesame Street? These are the people in your neighborhood. Yep. Like this is exactly what we're talking about here. Bill Gillette is a fireman, and he's just a member of the community. But so many of us kind of walk around in our everyday lives, and we consider ourselves. We don't always think about that guy who has that job, who really is the hero next door. Like I'm a big fan. I'm a big comic book fan. I say it all the time. My heroes are Captain America, are Spider-Man, are Superman. But the reality is that a Bill Gillette is a real life Captain America. He's actually saving people. He's actually making a real difference within the community. And let's be honest, this job, as you mentioned just a second ago, Larry Shea, this job is not for the faint of heart. Everyone can be everyone can do it, but not everyone can be called.
For sure. And, what I can add to this conversation is the character. I've known Bill for 30 years. He and I were roommates in college. We've been friends for a long time. And while I didn't know that he would wind up here, knowing him as well as I do, I'm not surprised that this is what he wound up doing. So with that, here is Bill Gillette. Now joining No Wrong Choices is a deputy fire chief for the city of Elmira Fire Department who's had 25 years on the job and has the perhaps unfortunate distinction of being my first college roommate. Please welcome Bill Gillette. Bill, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Larry. It's great talking to you again, and great meeting you guys. I really appreciate you having me on.
All right. So, Bill, first question is this. How many times during your college days, because I understand you guys were college roommates, how many times during your college days did you want to set Larry Samuels on fire?
Never once occurred to me.
Nice.
I don't believe you.
Exactly. I don't believe it either. Before we ask you how many calendars you've posed for, because that's coming. I just want you to know that's coming. Let's bring you back to your...
too.
Oh,
maybe that should be the first question.
Go for it. How many calendars have you posed for?
The answer is 1.
All right. Shirt on or shirt off?
Well, the firemen were not the stars of that calendar. What we did was a fundraiser for the city animal shelter. So those of us that had a dog or a cat all got to get in uniform and pose with our pet, and ended up being a successful fundraiser. So
which month were you?
1 and only 1.
Which month were you?
Okay.
I don't even remember. I'd have to get it out and look, to be honest with you.
It's not hanging up? You didn't frame that thing?
No frame. No frame. It's conveniently been buried.
Well, Bill, I had reached out to you before we did the episode telling you that I need photos for all of our social media marketing, so please send me that photo.
Nice.
I will. I'll be able to find that.
Let's bring us back to your youth, to your childhood. I mean, most boys, grow up, they want to be policemen or firemen or astronauts. I mean, you're literally on that top 3 list of professions of, what young people today kind of aspire, or yesterday or today aspire to be. So where did this start for you? Where did you get the fireman bug, so to speak?
And ironically, I was the complete opposite of that. I never really had ambitions to grow up and be a fireman as my career. I don't know if Larry told you, my father was a fireman also, and also a deputy chief for the city of Elmira for 36 years, and always admired him, was always interested in his job. But when I got old enough to start thinking about life after high school, that wasn't actually not on my list of things to do.
Well, what was on the list of things to do then?
Well, like most 18-year-olds, it was kind of a shot in the dark. I wanted to try to go to college and see if I could find a career. I was interested in sports broadcasting, sort of what you guys, a lot of your background has been, and communications and public relations. So that's what I did at SUNY Oswego with Larry.
All right. So outside of the unfortunate happenings that you had to be with Larry Samuels for 4 years in college. So, okay. So you gave being a broadcaster, being sports journalism a shot in college, at least. So what was it that made you say, no, this is not what I want to do?
Well, where life led me, in the few years after graduation, there weren't really that many opportunities for me to even get off the ground running in that career. So I, sought employment elsewhere and changed my interests a little bit, and tried a lot of different jobs. And one day decided that I would take some civil service tests, and among them the fire department, which I had obviously had the background and the lifelong knowledge about some things that the job was about through my father. But that's really how that all got started. It was not really a childhood dream, but I have to tell you, it's the best decision I've ever made.
So what is that process, Bill? I guess I have 2 questions. One, what were some of those jobs in between? Anything really cool, fun, and interesting?
Definitely not cool, fun, or interesting.
Fair enough. Take us into the process of becoming a fireman. The application process. Is there a physical aspect and a test you have to take? Like what is that whole process?
So basically, it's a civil service exam that you take. So you have to look for your, at least here, and I know FDNY has their own test because they're so big. But in our county, it's a civil service exam. So you sign up for that, you take the exam, you hope you do good and become reachable on a list. And as the department has vacancies and hires, you get canvassed, you get an interview, and then there is a physical test that they are basically just kind of see if you have enough to proceed with the hiring process. If you pass the written exam, you're reachable. They call you. You pass the physical test, they hire you, and if you're lucky enough, you may come on for a couple days, or if you're lucky enough, you may be able to be at the department for a couple weeks before they send you off. And our department usually sends our new recruits and new hires to the New York State Fire Academy in Montour, but we've had to send them elsewhere. Syracuse has had an academy, Utica, Binghamton. I ended up going to the Fire Academy in Montour.
All right, so tell me a little bit about this, the idea of canvassing and then the physical, right? So obviously you have to be physically fit to do this job. There's no way around it. So what is that process like? Like what do you mean by they give you a physical test? Like what are they asking you to lift? What are they asking you to run, etc.?
It's changed so much since I was hired. Today it's a little more cardio based, but in the exam for when I was hired, they take you through a bunch of different stations: climbing a ladder, pulling hose, connecting a hose, running through a tunnel, swinging a sledgehammer, knocking a tire off, picking up 50 pounds of weights in a bucket, carrying them, and everything's timed. So there was about 15 stations we had to go through, and each candidate goes through that at a time, and it's monitored by. Back when I took it, it was monitored by the local high school gym teachers. So once you pass that, you kind of wait for the new list to come out, which is a combination of your exam written score and how you did on the physical, and then you have a new placement on the list basically, and then you wait for vacancies to occur.
You must have killed it during the presidential fitness test, times during school. Absolutely.
With all the squat thrusts.
My other question then is, actually, you mentioned the idea like having to carry hose up a ladder. You know what? I've actually always wondered this. How much does hose weigh?
When it's empty, it's a lot more maneuverable and lighter. When it's filled with water, it's not so much the weight as the pressure that's exerted that can make it difficult to maneuver. There's different diameters, sizes of hose. The hand lines, which are the attack lines, which the firefighters usually take inside, and is usually our first choice for most fires, are relatively not too difficult to move. It takes a little bit, but as the attack lines get larger, your 2.5s and your 3s, they're a little bit harder to maneuver. A really large guy, physically fit, like some of your professional athletes, would not have a problem with a 2.5. I can do it, but it's harder for people my size.
So I guess my question would be, you have a written test, you have a physical test. Are you training both of these? Are you like tutoring with getting the mental part of it together, and then also doing exercises like sledgehammering and bringing hose up? Like, how are you training for this? Or you're just like, I'm just going to give it a one-shot deal? I would think you would have to like really game this out.
You do get some advance warning with your canvas letters that a physical fitness exam is coming. So there's kind of a saying that we say that's the time you really should be in one of the best shapes of your life. So that's what the candidates try to do. And as far as the written exam, as for the entrance exam, they really can't ask you a lot of firefighting questions because you aren't a firefighter yet and you don't know a lot about that. So that involved a lot of reading comprehension, organizing sentences, organizing paragraphs, which example or which selection best restates the sentence, things like that. And those are things, like I said, believe it or not, I didn't end up using my college degree per se, but having those extra college classes, certainly prepared me for that. Gave me a little bit of a leg up. So I did get to use a little bit of that, with taking the exams, the entrance exam, then promotional exams since then.
Well, you might be using your communications degree right now doing this podcast. I should point that out.
It's worth it. So I guess my next question then would be, let's just say you have somebody who's sort of clever, like myself, and could do the written stuff. Sort of, but is physically inept in almost every possible way and would never pass the physical test. Is there a place for somebody who has the mental acuity, but maybe not the physical stamina in the fire department? Is there like, I'm not going to go in and like bust up fires, but I can help you guys,
So in that case, yes, there is. Initially, though, again, it kind of reverts back to you can't be guaranteed that you would be, like, for example, larger departments have a fire prevention bureau that they don't necessarily have to do a lot of the same physical exertions that the line firefighters do, but you have to be able to get in and start at the ground level and work your way to that if that's your career choice once you're in the department. So yes, but to answer your question, initially you do have to have some physical ability.
So with that in mind, you go through the application process, the training, you get the nod. Tell us about Montour. When you went off to the academy, what is the training process? What are you doing every day?
So it wasn't too terrible for me because that's only about 25 minutes from where I lived at the time and from where I live still. It was about an 8-week program, which also, by the way, since I have gone, And talking to the new hires and recruits that have come back over the last several years, the academy's been extended to 12, I think maybe even 14 weeks now. So, and it has gotten a little more difficult physically. There's a lot more subjects that get covered now because the fire service has expanded into different areas. But when I went, it was an 8-week program. You have to be there. You had to report Sunday night. You basically trained all day, every day, Monday through Friday. You stayed there overnight. Friday about 5 o'clock, you go home.
So what is training like? Like, what does that mean? So you're training every day. It's like, what does a class look like? What does actual physical training look like? And then let me go beyond that. So you said initially for you, it was, let's say, 2 months of training. Now it's pulled out to 3 months to 14 weeks. And obviously things have changed, obviously, to add all these courses. So what are some of the, I guess, like, what are some of the new things that firefighters have to be trained for, have to know?
Different, basically large scale responses, whether it be hazardous materials, biological, chemical weapons, terrorism.
Wow.
That's a whole new ball game. I mean,
how long has that been in place?
Oh, it was in place even back when I was in there. It's just been expanded because of all the different world events, international and international events that have happened. Let's see. It's a lot of classroom work. I'm trying to get back to what you were asking before a little bit. It was a lot of classroom work, and also it was a lot of physical exercise. And you have to remember, everybody's coming in with virtually, they assume that you're coming in with no knowledge of firefighting whatsoever. That's how it's designed.
You're a blank slate.
Yeah, you're a blank slate, and they teach you the engine company operations, ladder truck company operations, emergency medical technician, hazardous materials, rescue, you name it. There's a lot of different jobs and a lot of different courses that you get subjected to, and there's weekly tests, weekly quizzes, different instructors every week. That was a challenging sometimes, but also a good thing too, that you would get different instructors from all across New York State that would come there to teach these academies. So you got exposed to different size departments, different experiences. So it's all good.
Now, are you actually, putting out, I mean, I assume the answer is yes. Are you actually putting out fires at the academy that, are being started? You're working, as a team, you're learning all that stuff. Like, to take us through that.
Yep. They're controlled, of course, and part of the academy's program. But you do a lot of that. They have 1 week, I believe that they now refer to it as live burn week up there, which is
sounds nice.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. Very regulated. You have to basically see how people are going to react in those situations, even though they are controlled. You still have to get an idea of what that's going to be like. It's definitely not a substitute for the real thing because now the controls are off. But it was a good experience.
What were the emotions associated with that? Seeing a fire for the first time and stepping in, was fear a part of what you were doing? Adrenaline? Like, what were the emotions associated with all this?
Adrenaline, I wouldn't really call it fear. I mean, everybody should be a little bit apprehensive of fire. I mean, let's be honest. It's not a macho thing to say, you're not afraid of fire. Everybody should be, because it's sometimes out of your control. But adrenaline, Larry, definitely a big thing. Excitement, trying something new, wanting to be good at it, failures, successes, you name it.
Yeah, and building off of that, I mean, do you see people drop out? I mean, I would be the guy who would get into this, and I would be like, I can do this, and then the reality of it might set in, and you'd be like, is this really for me? I mean, I have to think at this point in your training is the time to really ask yourself, I'm doing something that's scary. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, like you said, I'm doing something that's really scary. Is this for me? I could lose my life doing my job, and you can't say that with every job. Is that something you talk about in class? Do you discuss it? Is it unspoken because you're all there for a reason? Like, I would have tough time processing that part of it.
It's drilled into you right away, and that never ends throughout your career. Any course you take, any training you take, the number one priority is your own personal safety. And the biggest reason for that is because if you can't keep yourself safe, how the heck are you going to keep your crewmen safe and the people that you're protecting safe? So that's drilled into you right away. So there are dropouts occasionally. If you make it through the academy, you've pretty much decided, yes, this is for me.
Obviously, then the next step is you're going to be assigned somewhere, right? So what's that process like, and how does that work?
During your time at the academy, your home department, gets reports from the academy, and they check your progress. And again, you have all kinds of final exams. You have cognitive skill tests that you have to complete. And once your department learns that, they say you get set up for a graduation ceremony up there, and hopefully you're the chief of your department hands you your assignment letter. At graduation tells you where you're going to report, what shift you're going to be on, what hours you're going to be working.
So like Larry Shea asked just a second ago about the idea, like, let's just say you're not at your peak fitness, and there are other roles within the department that you can take. Is that something that comes out at the end of your time at the academy? Like, you're going to go on to you're going to be a part of a ladder company. You'll go on to investigate fires. You'll do something more administrative. Does that happen at that point?
It really does not, because your hire date, maybe by the time you get hired and start the academy, let's call it 2 weeks. Let's say the academy's 3 months, and then you graduate. At least in our department, I believe this is similar to most departments in New York State, give or take some time. You're still on probation until the year anniversary of your hire date. So during that time, you are expected, you're the low man on the totem pole. You need to be learning the job, and then you have to be learning to balance your work life, your home life. You have to learn the streets. I mean, I was lucky. I spent most of my life in Elmira, and being a letter carrier certainly didn't hurt with me knowing all the streets that I hadn't come across in my life here. So you have to learn all those things. So you really can't jump into a less physically necessary part of the job until you really get some time. And that's how it works with most departments. Some of the larger departments, there may be a quicker avenue. It just depends because they have more of those positions available.
So you talked about probation, like the 1 year. I find that very interesting because I'm imagining like when you get that job and you now know this is your brotherhood, these are the people you're with, this is your firehouse. You must know when that first call came exactly what you're responsible for in a military sense of here's what's required of me. And what is that experience like? I mean, I assume when the call comes, every single person knows exactly what to do to the second.
Yeah, and that comes with time and experience. And when you first start out and you get those first calls, it's not that you don't know what you're supposed to be doing because you've been training on that, and your peers and your officers have drilled that into you. But you get those butterflies, you get those what ifs, and you're lucky if the first time you get your gear on correctly, even though you've drilled on it 1,000 times. You get it.
I would definitely screw it up for sure.
We all do, but everybody comes around and gets better, and it's like anything else. Those things become second nature as the longer you work.
So take us through a moment. You get a call. What happens? Is it a bell? First of all, is it a bell? Like what happens? Like how do you know, oh crap, time to go?
That's changed too over the years. When I right before I came in, our county had just gone over to 911. Prior to that, there had been a firefighter assigned to the phone room, usually a senior firefighter that would take all the calls. And when 911 was implemented, that changed to basically station-wide overhead speakers in all the stations. So there used to be a quick tone. They would say Department 6 Elmira, what type of call it is, where it is, and any pertinent details. And that would be repeated twice over the intercom and then twice over our portable radios. So everybody gets to hear it 4 times. And when you're first starting out, when you get those first few calls, it's a good thing they're saying it 4 times, because you'd be surprised of all the other things that are going through your head.
Yeah.
Now the call comes in. Do you then immediately run to a pole and slide down it?
Do you still have fire poles?
We have one station. We have 3 stations in the city, and we do have one that still has 2 fire poles in it. Our headquarters never did have fire poles, but our Station 5, which houses an engine company, and Station 3, which also houses an engine company, Station 3 does have the poles too. Station 5 does not. So we move quickly. We move with a purpose. If we're far away, we jog, trot. We try not to run, because it's just we try to keep it under control, because you need to get your wits about you pretty quick.
And before we ask you if you have a Dalmatian and a great chef is required
I was gonna do that
in
later.
each firehouse, with the pole talk, do you get information as you're on your way to whatever the emergency is? Because it could be a fire, but it could be a crash, it could be anything. Are you then, when you're on the way, getting that information, updates, or do you just have to wait and see what unfolds when you get there?
It varies. Sometimes both. Sometimes we don't get any updates at all, and through no fault of the dispatchers, it's just the information they were given. The call ends up being completely different than what they were told it was going to be. And then other times, when bad things are happening, or as 911 gets more information, they will update us on what's going on, whether it's like you said, whether it's a fire, natural gas leak, an emergency medical call, or any of the different things that we respond to.
All right, so I want to take it back just a little bit. I want to take it back just a little bit to, let's say, your probationary year. First of all, what is a rookie fireman called?
That's a good question.
And it doesn't have to be. Bill? And it doesn't have to be clean. This is, we can always check the box off.
An FNG. Let's put it that way.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha.
There's some people out there that'll understand that.
All right. So, as the new guy, what is your role in the department? What is your role in your firehouse? And then also coupled with that, how many men make up a firehouse?
It depends.
Or how many firefighters make up a firehouse?
It depends. That answer is different for every city and every department. In our city, we have 3 stations. There's 3 to 4 firefighters and officers included, usually at every station. So it just depends on, and as far as what task you're assigned, it depends on what station you're at and what vehicle you're assigned to, and what seat you're in, believe it or not.
All right. So as the new guy, what is your role? What's your specific role?
That would depend on what apparatus I was assigned to, but most likely the newest guys, the guys with the least experience that are just getting in, maybe still on probation, they're probably not going to be driving yet, or not going to be the chauffeurs yet, because they don't know the streets enough, and they might not have enough practice putting the engine in pump gear or operating the aerial tower. So we give them time to get all that ready while they're still again, doing their ongoing training, ongoing education. The first year or so is super hectic for a new firefighter. Not only do you have to get through the academy, but after that you have several different areas of rescue or emergency medical treatment that you have to get through.
And some of that, it's a literal trial by fire, right?
Some of it is, yeah. Some of it is. They try not to make it too much like that, because again, the personal safety thing is a big thing, where we want to protect ourselves too, and we don't want to foolishly put people in situations that they aren't ready for, because that doesn't help anybody.
I want to make sure I heard you correct. Did you call the drivers chauffeurs?
Yeah, sometimes they are called chauffeurs. That's kind of hit or miss in our department. Most of the time, we just call them driver. Or if they're not the driver, there's usually an officer. There's an officer assigned to every rig, and then there's what we call a backwards guy, who usually either rides backwards or is responsible for turning the water on at the hydrant.
Got it. And who out of all those people gets the fun job of turning on the sirens and making noise?
Well, that depends. I get to do it myself because I don't have a driver. I fly solo in my car, so I get to do all that. And then on the ladder truck and the engines, that depends who the officer is. There's no set rule, just that we use those emergency warning devices if we need them. Somebody has to do it.
Somebody has to do it.
Some of them are pretty possessive about that. You will not touch that siren.
I'll bet.
Wow.
That would be the job I'd be like volunteering for. Like you'd
be good at
you
that.
guys do all the heavy stuff. I'm going to make all the noise over here. All right, let's get to, as again, we say the elephant in the room. Have you been in that situation where scary doesn't even probably do it justice, but have you been in a situation where all your training has to come together or you're not going to get out of there?
Yeah, absolutely. Almost everybody in our department at one time or another is assigned the attack person on the front of the nozzle for the attack hose line going in. It's an experience for sure, but again, you don't get put in that position until you're trained, until you're ready, and you've worked with the guys that have been there the longest that are showing you what to do. And one rule of thumb that's very important too is nobody ever goes inside alone, ever. That's no exceptions to that rule, basically. And accountability is a very big thing with us.
Can you walk us through one of the bigger situations that you've had to deal with?
Well, I can tell you one of the scariest ones that you'd mentioned earlier about being scared. It's not that you're scared when you go in these fires if you've made it this far, but you are apprehensive because I'm sure you guys, I don't know if you have wives or if you've watched some of the TV shows, not like that at all. where they're in the middle of the fire and you can see everybody, and the firemen all have masks on, and then the victim they come to is suddenly upright, talking and laughing, and then when he goes outside to the fresh air, then he coughs. I get a big kick out of that. You can't see anything. You're lucky if you can hear because you have radio traffic over your radio. You have the sound of the fire. You have the sound of other crew members opening doors and windows. Sometimes additional apparatus arriving, sirens. So there's a lot of noise factor. You're completely blind. You have to rely on your training, your hands. You have to find a wall. You're trained on how to proceed in and not lose your positioning in the dark when you can't see. You're also hearing your own SCBA, your air pack. You're trying to listen to your teammates who are also on air. And when everybody is, imagine how clear everybody sounds when, like we're talking right now. Now imagine all of us with an air pack on where we just went up 3 flights of stairs, crawled down 3 hallways, and are tired. It just changes everything. So that's what it's like. And then if you've got your gear on right, which you do by now at this point, you start to feel, you're looking and you're listening, you're looking for the glow, you're listening for the crackle, and you're adjusting to the heat, the temperature changes. And that's where those first couple times, that's where it gets you, and you pucker up a little bit. I'm not going to lie about it. You do, but you know that you've got your water with you. You know that there's a coordinated attack effort going on. You trust the guys around you, and you trust your training.
All right, so I'm going to go a couple of different directions here. One, because this obviously we're dealing in the realm of sound right now, and you mentioned the sound of a fire. I never really thought about that before. What does a fire sound like?
Well, you've got crack again. There's a lot of crackling. The fire is eating away at wood, the building components, furniture, whatever it can get itself into, basically.
And then I guess to couple that is that it sounds a lot like military training, what you're doing, right? So this notion of we have attack squad, we have a guy on who's the attack guy on a hose. You go in pair. You have to at least go in pairs. Like, how close is this to I guess being in the military?
It's obviously it's not quite the same. The military has its own set of rules, set of things that they have to train on and be concerned about. we call it sort of a paramilitary organization where it's based on, again, accountability. There are officers directing the coordinated attack that has to happen at every fire. So those in those ways, it is similar.
Yeah, talk about that.
The camaraderie is very similar to, I imagine, to what the military has.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's a brotherhood in that regard. Talk to me about the communication. We're talking about sound and so forth. I mean, so you have the cacophony of the fire, things collapsing around you, the crackling, et cetera. You mentioned the radio. I've only been around a few like major fires, let's call them, in my life. But the thing I remember most is, for me, it seemed chaotic. Like, how the heck do they know what floor their guys are on? Who's doing what? How are you attacking this thing? I mean, from what you're telling us in our audience, I mean, it's a coordinated, smart, planned out attack all the time. Like, because the military and the firemen don't do anything willy-nilly, right? It's all thought out, correct?
It is, but interestingly enough, we have what we call a standard operating guidelines, where all things being equal, starting out, this is how we're going to begin this operation. And by the time we're done, we're usually off plan A and on plan M somewhere down the line. Because,
right. Because you've got to pivot, of course, constantly.
And no two residences or building fires or anything like that seem to be alike. The fire patterns and characteristics of what the fire does when everything's all cleared out and we look, there's a lot of similarities there, but it's never the same twice. And that's what makes it interesting, and can cause a little apprehension on our part once in a while. But again, we talk about those things afterwards and we always try to do better. And it never goes, very rarely goes exactly as planned, but we expect that, because we're not, fire is not alive. It's something that we can't control, but through training and through the experience over the years and history of firefighting, firefighters have learned, the things that they can do to stop the fire from going where you want it to go, releasing heat by ventilation and things like that.
So, and you're just talking about fire. I mean, right? We're just talking, like, you are also required. I mean, think about where firemen are called. What are some of the things that firemen are, quote unquote, responsible for that we wouldn't even think about? Accidents, I'm thinking about. There must be other things where, like, oh yeah, you got to call the fire department. They're going to come and take care of that. Because you guys are heroes in every sense of the word, and you don't just conquer fires.
That's very interesting, and those responsibilities have actually increased quite a bit since the time I got hired too. In our city and in most career fire departments, it's, as you said, it's not just the fire suppression; it's emergency medical service. It's responding to vehicle accidents, natural gas leaks, carbon monoxide incidents, all various forms of rescues. And in Elmira, we have the Chemung River that runs through town. We're part of the County River Task Force. We have some man-made lakes sometimes that we have to get people out of. We're trained in confined space, hazardous materials response, which the department is also the county team for that. So there's just so many different things that come in, and it's funny because we never say we've seen it all. We like to think we've seen it all, but right up to the last day I report for work, I won't be surprised if I see something that I've never seen before.
Wow. Based upon this conversation, I think I already know the answer, but I do need to ask the question. Have you been injured on the job?
I have been very fortunate. I've had to fill out some exposure reports a few times just because of the nature of the call that we were responding to. I've been lucky so far that I have not been seriously injured.
Wow.
And again, a lot of that is circumstantial, but it's also training, and it's trying to keep yourself in halfway decent shape. Those things all help. And I've seen a lot of my coworkers that have been injured, and it's not fun.
Have you ever lost a coworker?
We not on the job as far as like the result of a direct call. We did lose a coworker from cancer back in 2016 from exposures that he did suffer from being a fireman.
All right. So before, when we started this conversation, you had said that you did not want to go. You didn't essentially want to follow in your father's footsteps to be a fireman. But obviously, circumstances led you down that path. So now that you've essentially gone into the quote unquote family business, what was your primary apprehension from not wanting to go into the fire department to start?
There really wasn't any. Again, I'd been around that and heard a lot of the stories through my father, and it wasn't that I didn't want to. I just really mostly did not really know what I wanted to do. The sports broadcasting and the communications did seem interesting to me, and I definitely want to at least give that a try. And I don't regret giving that a try. There's things from that have served me well. All my experiences at Oswego, have served me in this job.
Funneling, for example?
Yeah, sure. One thing, ironically, that I did do in my first 3 or 4 years in the department, with the public relations background, back then there were a lot of things going on. Elmira was not in the best financial situation and didn't have the best relationship with city government at that time. And I put together one of the first promotional fire department brochures, which basically talked about how long we've been around, all the services we provide, and pictures of the apparatus, and making sure that people knew that we were on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And so I did get to use some of my college skills there. And with being an officer, you're responsible for not only your safety, but your crewmates' safety and the guys working underneath you. And the speaking I did, the communication classes I did, having to get up in front of people in a lot of different situations, that served me well too. I've been a lot more comfortable being able to do that, and I've gotten some pretty decent feedback about how my lessons at the fire department and training have gone and what I need to work on. But I've never I never would have been able to do that as comfortably had I not had that background in college.
Who knew that you had to make a brochure to say, "Hey, the fire department won't allow your house to burn down"? Come on,
yeah.
You need a brochure to tell people this?
That's hilarious.
That's crazy.
You just hit the nail on the head there. And like I said, there was different times now. It's things are a lot more amicable, and the city's in a lot better of a position now. So, but we still try to promote what we do. We want people to know that they can rely on us and count on us.
So talk about your family. This is your profession. They didn't choose it. You chose it. Is it hard on them? Firsthand, was it hard on you as a boy, with your dad being a fireman? What's it like for your family to know that, you're in a profession where you sometimes do have to put your life on the line?
So again, my family's been extremely supportive and extremely understanding. Even just leaving the day to go to work in Elmira, here we work a 24-hour schedule. We used to work a different schedule, but now it's 24 hours. So when I'm gone, I'm away from them for 24 hours at a time. Have a couple days off after that. And what you do, you make it work. Growing up, I had to understand that my dad couldn't be there for everything, but he also was there for everything he could be. And I never felt like he wasn't there enough. He did everything that he could. And that carried over for my own family today. It can be hard when you have younger kids on the mother, on the wife, but we adapt, we make do, we take turns with things, we cooperate, and it works out. My own kids understood once in a while that I wasn't going to be there for every play or every ball game, but you make every other one that you can when you're off. And the same thing with holidays. You work your share of holidays over your career, nights, weekends, and you make other plans. You make it work.
How would you react if one of your kids came to you and said that I want to be a firefighter?
I would support. I would support them whatever they wanted to do. I remember my father absolutely never pushed it on me. He wanted me to be myself and find my own way. And ironically, I did, and it just happened to be following in his footsteps. So to answer that question, I would be supportive. I would absolutely be supportive. I want my kids to do whatever makes them happy.
I want to ask you before we let you go, and you've been gracious with your time. Thank you very much for that. I want to ask about something that I saw recently about firefighting, which involved virtual reality and training purposes and things of that nature. In other words, creating situations where you put firefighters in a room and it kind of trains them and teaches them how to escape these situations, what to do when it's a panicked situation. There are tools out there now that certainly weren't around when you were training and coming up. And I'm wondering how much that could help, how much you see it in the future, and what you think about it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think those opportunities are only going to get better for future firefighters. Very interesting. If we had those tools available to us, I would have loved to have taken advantage of that. I think that could be really useful. There's definitely no substitute for the actual cognitive hands-on experience and training drills, but I'm not against that at all. I think there's going to be some pretty interesting technologies that could come out and could really help a lot of professions, not just firefighters, with getting an idea of, look, this is what it's going to be like. And, that could maybe tell somebody a little bit earlier on, I'm not sure this is for me, or yeah, I definitely, I want more.
All right. So obviously I think I kind of know the answer to this question. I'm going to ask you next. I'm going to assume that being a firefighter is not extremely lucrative. You're not walking around with Donald Trump type money. So
is Donald Trump walking around with Donald Trump like money?
We'll figure that out for another show. But
okay.
But the question is, how much of this, or would you say that what you do is a calling?
It ends up being, yes, I do. I'm not going to lie. It was a decent, salary and benefits opportunity. That was helpful for me back then. You're not going to be a millionaire being a fireman. We do okay. We're certainly not complaining about anything. We're fortunate with that we have pay, that we have some benefits in our retirement. So we're very fortunate for all of that. So, but no, you're not going to walk around with Donald Trump money, that's for sure.
Okay, so I want to ask you a couple quickie fun questions.
Sure.
I know you said that. I know that you said that there's not one show or movie that's realistic as a fireman. Obviously, what's your favorite fireman movie anyway?
Oh, favorite fireman movie. Let's see. I've watched Backdraft like everybody did. I haven't watched too many firefighting movies since then. I can tolerate Chicago Fire. I don't know if you guys have seen that. And again,
what about Fire Country?
My wife watches that. I've seen a couple of them, and again, I don't know. A lot of that, it's romanticized.
No. Look, obviously it's romanticized.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
He doesn't want to take fire home with him. He has that at the office.
I mean, obviously, it's like, oh my God, this dope. I wouldn't do what this dope did, obviously, right?
Right.
My wife
How about the Towering Inferno? You a big Towering Inferno guy?
Yeah. I remember that from. You're talking the '70s classic.
Yeah, the old Steve McQueen movie.
That was one of my sister and I's favorite movies growing up. The disaster movies, the original disaster movies. Yeah,
one of the best, one of the absolute best.
Absolutely, classic.
And then I guess I have to ask the Dalmatian question. Do you guys have a Dalmatian in your station?
We do now. We're not allowed actually to keep a dog there. They've never had one to my knowledge. Ironically, though, if I do find the calendar picture for the City of Elmira animal shelter that we did, we had a blue tick coonhound large dog mix, and he was black spotted with long white hair, and everybody thought he was a Dalmatian. The only difference is the Dalmatians are short haired, and that's who my pictures with. His name was Seamus, so everybody thought from afar away he was a Dalmatian. So if I can get that picture to Larry, that's as close to a Dalmatian as we've come.
But
Amazing.
you do.
It's going to be all over social media.
It is going to be all over social media. You do have a chef, though, right? That is the requirement, right?
Oh, I totally forgot that
somebody
question.
has
Absolutely.
to cook, correct?
Well, and again, we don't have a designated breakfast, lunch, or dinner hour, so we eat when we can. Usually, the guys take turns cooking. Some are better than others. And
How are you?
I'm definitely not the best chef, but I'm the best eater for sure. I'll eat anything that anybody makes.
What is that meal that no one's allowed to make?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think there is one, but we do have a dessert that's taboo in the fire department, the half moon cookie. So over the past few decades, there was 3 or 4 different firemen that just had a knack. Whenever they would bring those in, like clockwork, there would be at least one fire that day. I'm not one of those guys.
I got you. Okay.
I'm not one of those guys. In fact, I'm the opposite. When they come in, still to this day, even the young guys have heard the stories and the legends about the half moon cookies. I eat one right away, and they all look at me with their jaw dropped to the floor, and I just say, "It's not up to me. I'm having a cookie."
Look at you. Look at you.
Whether you like it or not. So, Bill, final question before we part ways. Advice to somebody who's thinking about getting into this line of work. Do you recommend it? What approach do they take, whether it be local or beyond that?
Again, it's been the best choice that I've ever made. I would encourage anybody that is interested to really find out what it means for where you're going to apply or where you live. It certainly helps to be in good physical condition, be a good reader. I always tell our new hires that come in the door in this job, you're going to see the best in people, you're going to see the worst in people, and everything in between. And you got to make your own opinion on what people tell you you're going to see, how you should do things. You got to form all those opinions about the job and about your coworkers yourself. And yeah, I would definitely encourage people having a medical background doesn't hurt as far as knowing CPR, being an EMT already. Those are good things to know. And
very
basically,
good.
you want to find out whether it's your local civil service, whatever county you live in or city you live in, what the requirements are, how those announcements come out, and get yourself ahead of the game. You might want to build a resume. You might want to have some references of people that would recommend you and be character witnesses for you. So those are all good things that somebody that was thinking about getting involved could get a head start on. And no background really is going to hurt you. We have people from all different backgrounds. We've had chemists, we've had construction workers, we've had people that have gone to college, a lot of people have gone to the military, and we've all kind of melted together and get the job done.
So I guess I had one more quick question before we let you go.
Yeah,
we're going to let you go like 5 minutes.
I got all the time in the world.
So, does the department does the fire department, whether it be in Elmira and in New York City, wherever, does it smile more favorably upon someone with a college degree, or does that matter?
Not necessarily. Again, it doesn't hurt you one bit. I ended up using.
Do you advance quicker?
It would depend on maybe in some of the larger departments that have expanded positions beyond what Elmira has. It's possible. It's not a mandatory. The only thing that is mandatory is a high school diploma or GED equivalency. That part I'm pretty sure almost everybody requires, but college degree not required.
Well, for me, I'm glad that you have a college degree because it put us in a position to have this conversation today.
Yes.
Bill, I don't want to throw the word hero
You're a
around
hero.
because it
Get
sounds
out of here. You're a
cliche.
hero.
I used
but
it
at
already.
the same time, you're doing something so incredible, so meaningful. Thank you for what you're doing, and thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Well, I really appreciate you guys having me on, and I gotta tell you, most people that you'll come across in this career, we don't think of ourselves as heroes, and we really honestly don't like the limelight. We don't like to be put on the pedestal. We think there's a lot of other people that deserve just as much, if not more, recognition for being heroes that we do. But if you have a passion for this job, you really do like helping people. You want to see things done right. You want to see everybody go home and enjoy their life. And so I appreciate those compliments, guys, and I'm really glad to be on your show today.
Well, as I mentioned to Bill, I'm very happy that he got that college degree from SUNY Oswego to put us in a position to have this conversation today. And with that in mind, I am in no way surprised that he wound up where he is, knowing the character of Bill.
I'll just say this. Wow. Just wow. Look, we've spoken to a lot of people over the years, and not just here on the podcast, but in our past lives as broadcasters. And, you know, there have been very few times where I can say that I have been surprised, and at the same time, you know, like I admire the guy. I'm going to say I admire the guy, because these are guys, you know, firefighters in general are people who see essentially see the rest of us at the worst moment in our lives, and they have to be there to be the calming force, or to be that person who rescues us. And to say that no, we're not heroes, he's wrong. You are here. They are heroes, and they need to be told this. And I understand. Look, it's great that they're humble, and you know, a lot of senses. I get that. I understand that notion of, you know, you don't want to get that type of an ego about you sometimes, right? Because they consider themselves just a part of the fabric of the community. But they really are more. They're closer to being pillars of the community than anybody else in the community.
You're exactly right, T. And let's also keep score. No Dalmatian, one sliding pole.
That sucks.
Multiple chefs in the right. But yeah, you're exactly 100% correct. I mean, such admiration I have for Bill and everything him and others do in this profession. And to that end, all the various things that we don't think about that they're responsible for, like search and rescue and lake, you know, ice breaking on lakes, and, you know, all those other things, toxic waste, you know, discoveries. We just think of them as fire people, but there's so much more than that, because they handle so many states of emergency. And to your point, T, as I said to him, I've only been involved with a few of these emergency incidents, but the presence of somebody of training and stature, like a fire person, to stand there and comfort you in your worst moment in your life is just such an admirable thing. And we know there are countless thousands more just like Bill Gillette, and it's such a good profession for anybody to pursue, because we need people. We need people to help, and this isn't something that people run towards necessarily. You know, people like me run away from it. So a lot of admiration for Bill and people like Bill.
It's that old cliche, right? That they run to danger while the rest of us run away from it.
That's right.
So, but it's so true. But it's so true.
You know, the other part that I think about is his family. You know, I do remember meeting his father many years ago, and I didn't remember that he was a firefighter, but it's something that has, you know, stayed in the family. And, you know, he grew up in this situation. He saw what it was like when his father left the house every day. And it wasn't something that scared him away. In a way, it brought him closer to it. And to hear that he would encourage one of his kids to follow this path in his footsteps really says a lot about this being a calling and what it means and the importance of the role. And in his humble way, understanding the significance of what he's doing and why it's so important. So with that, we thank Bill Gillette for joining this episode of No Wrong Choices. We also thank you for joining us. Please be sure to give us a 5-star rating and follow along on your podcasting platform if you like what you heard. We also encourage you to join the conversation by visiting our website at NoWrongChoices.com and by following us on social media by searching for No Wrong Choices. On behalf of Tushar Saxena and Larry Shea, I'm Larry Samuels. Thanks again for joining us. Never forget, there are no wrong choices on the road to success. We learn from every experience.